Welcome to Earth Chats. In this show, we chat to leaders, influencers, and organizations who are passionate about making our Earth a better place. We are all aware of the dangers of pollution and how global climate change could impact our lives. Join us and listen to the conversation where leaders in making our world better will share their stories, advice, and opinions. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram TV, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure to join us and let's take hands to save our planet and make our world a better place. Good day, everyone, and welcome back to Earth Chats. Today I'm speaking to Justin Smith. Justin is the Head of Business Development at the World Wildlife Fund. Welcome, Justin, to Earth Chats.
Thanks so much, Will. Really appreciate being invited.
No, it's our pleasure. So, Justin, tell us a little bit about yourself, your history, and how you got involved in the business of the environment.
So, Will, I guess like a lot of South Africans, I grew up with my family going to our various wildlife reserves and parks and was always really in love with nature from an early age. I guess I went through all the stages of, should I work as a game ranger or a vet or anything like that? And then a bit of practicality set in. And I ended up studying law and finance, but eventually dental law right at the end of my studies as well. And when I started working in the corporate space, I was lucky enough one day that, environmental and sustainability issues were starting to become a lot more of a priority in the business environment, and it eventually turned into a full-time job. So I worked as a corporate sustainability kind of lead for a number of big companies in South Africa, including Woolies and Nedbank. And interestingly, on both of those companies had partnerships with WWF in terms of not only supporting WWF's work, but also working with WWF to improve their own strategies. So when the day came that there was a really interesting position available, I've been there now for about 2.5 years. And I guess I'm one of those lucky people who've been able to see both parts of these type of partnerships, both the business side and the NGO side. And, the happy space when they really work together well.
Wow, okay, that sounds interesting. Justin, the WWF itself has a long and, a great history in South Africa. Can you tell us a bit about the history of the WWF and also the actual mission going forward?
So WWF, or Worldwide Fund for Nature, started globally about 60 years ago. And actually South Africa, not long afterwards, 52 years ago now, it was started by Dr. Anton Rupert and a number of other business leaders. And, over time has really developed into one of the biggest and sort of leading environmental and sustainability related NGOs in South Africa. So we work still with many other WWF offices across the rest of the world. WWF's operating in over 100 countries, but each office is relatively independent, and that allows us to also prioritize what are the kind of local context issues that we should be focusing on in South Africa, for example. I think a big part of our mission at the moment and for the future is really trying to connect people and nature in a different way. I think getting people to understand that we're so dependent on nature for all of the resources that we work with, for the health of our planet, and for basic things like energy, food, water. So if we don't think carefully about protecting those resources, it's really going to affect our economic opportunity and our basic existence going forward as well. So our brand kind of ethos at the moment is something called For Nature For You, really trying to highlight to people those connections and how important they really are.
Yeah, they are. And, you guys are doing great work. The WWF has a very large and diverse portfolio of projects. I mean, you guys are involved in a number of things. Can you give us a quick overview of your activities?
For sure. We do try and look at all of the different kind of environmental and social issues and how they interact, but we've got kind of 6 big program areas that we work on in South Africa. We've got a big protected area expansion program. So how we try and increase the biodiversity protection of our important areas in South Africa and add those to national and provincial parks, bring them under stewardship. We've got a very big freshwater program. I think we'll all agree that water issues are a continuing challenge for us in this country, and a lot of our work is about trying to protect South Africa's key strategic water source areas. We do a lot of work around our marine resources as well, both in terms of, again, protecting the marine protected areas, but also around kind of seafood and value chains. How do we get the seafood companies, the retailers, the restaurants and consumers making good choices and protecting our very valuable marine resources as well? We've got a quite big energy and climate program that really looks at how important those issues are within the South African context, particularly because we're obviously a really big global emitter. The size of our emissions versus the size of our economy is a really big concern, as an example. The fifth area that we also do is our sustainable agriculture and food work, working again both with producers and farmers, but also with consumers around making good choices around our food system. And I think a lot of people get really surprised that actually, food system change is having the biggest impact on our planet. A lot of the places where we, clearing ecosystems out is for food production, particularly kind of livestock feed production. And if we don't start making really good decisions around food, we're going to be in a very difficult situation. And then I think finally, probably what we were initially kind of known for is our wildlife program work. We are in South Africa, particularly on rhino and elephant, the kind of key species, both in terms of trying to improve our kind of management of anti-poaching activities, also working with communities around national parks in terms of involving them in those decisions and making sure that they've got good livelihood options so that they don't turn to poaching. And then also creating new populations of particularly our black rhino species across Southern Africa as well. And then I think just to sort of support all of that work, we also have an environmental leaders program where we take on honors and master's graduates and try and create a new kind of exciting group of environmental leaders who go into the sector in South Africa. We run that every 18 months. And we also work with the finance sector, particularly to try and really influence kind of finance and investment. Because I think if we get that right, and we sort of target financial flows to doing or supporting businesses and decision making that's going to protect the environment, that'll go a long way into having a whole knock-on positive impact.
That's quite interesting. So are you basically educating or also maybe putting pressure on companies to be more sustainable from your side?
We are. We're trying to work with a very wide range of partners in the corporate space to help them with their strategy, help them with their targets going forward, and then also help them kind of influence their policies. So, one of our long-term partners, Nedbank, just last week made, I guess, history in South Africa. They were the first company to have a climate change resolution approved at the annual general meeting. And that means that the way that they invest their money going forward is going to be very different in terms of what kind of projects and policies that they'll be supporting. And, moving away from very dirty power to trying to continue to really support the growth of renewable energy in South Africa as an example.
Well, I think it's important, like you say, to get the corporate sector involved, but also, like you rightly say, investment funds that are investing in sustainable businesses. And I think your investors are currently looking at that type of thing. I've noticed that there's been a movement towards that. So, it's really interesting what you're saying. Apologies for the short interruption, but I do need to mention something. We really need to raise awareness about the dangers facing our environment. The Earth Chat podcast was started as a campaign to bring people together to save and protect our planet for generations to come. To make it easier for everyone to access our content and the advice shared by leaders in our mission for a better world, we have created a new website where you can access all our shows and featured articles. Visit us today on earthchats.bitmedia24.com, where you will find loads of interesting and insightful information, as well as tips and ideas of how you can participate in our mission of a better Earth. Here is that link again, earthchats.bitmedia24.com. Now, On with the show. The other thing that I'm wondering, I saw Cape Town the other day become one of the first cities in the world to sign plastic-free, some type of agreement that they would go plastic-free. Can't remember by which year now, off the top of my head. But I think it's also important. I suppose you also work in with cities and with governments to do the same.
Absolutely. Well, that was the South African Plastics Pact, which is the initiative that we've been driving, and has now the management's been passed on to one of our partners, the Green Cape, and that brought together a whole bunch of cities as well as companies and other partners in South Africa who've put commitments in place for 2025 in terms of changing their strategies and the way that they engage with plastic issues.
Oh, that's awesome. So the World Wildlife Fund is also managing a number of trusts, and these trusts are legal entities in their own right. Can you share a little bit more about this?
Yeah, I think the affiliated trusts that we work with, and there are 5 of them, are really important kind of entities that help bring money into conservation and environmental issues in South Africa for a very wide range of projects. So I think one that some people may have heard of is the WWF Nedbank Green Trust, and that's now almost 30 years old. So if you had a Nedbank Green Affinity credit card, or back in the day, long ago, a checkbook, Nedbank donates a portion of the money to conservation projects that WWF helps kind of plan and inform. So that's managed to really fund hundreds of millions of rands worth of conservation over the 30 years of its existence, and in a very easy way for consumers who don't actually have to even kind of donate any money of their own. We've got the Table Mountain Fund, which operates particularly to look after the Cape Fynbos ecosystem. And I think many people realize that for those of us who are sitting here in the Western Cape, we're in a unique kind of fynbos biome, one of only 6 in the world, with incredible amounts of species diversity. So the Table Mountain Fund really works with communities and other partners to try and protect the Cape Fynbos system and keep it operating into the future. In a similar way, we've got the Leslie Hill Succulent Karoo Trust. And Leslie Hill was a passionate conservationist who left some money in a trust that was then created to be run by WWF to really protect the succulent karoo. So again, one of our key kind of biodiversity hotspots in South Africa. And his funding and the growth of it over time has helped create a whole lot of protected areas. It's helped create a new National Botanical Garden in the Huntum Botanical Gardens. It's helped add to the Namakwa National Park and many other parks, and really helped to conserve the incredible species diversity again within the succulent karoo biome. We then also work with another trust called the National Parks Trust, which really looks at adding land to our national park portfolio across South Africa. So funding the acquisition of properties that come up for sale that could be added to our national parks, as well as supporting stewardship initiatives with landowners, in close proximity to those national parks as well. And then finally, the last one, also really interestingly, is the Southern African Wildlife College Trust. And the Southern African Wildlife College is located in Hoedspruit. It's just on the border of the Kruger Park. And it's basically been incredible in terms of really training rangers and other kind of parks employees across the African continent for a number of years. Well over 22,000 people have gone through their courses and gone to a number of different countries and obviously to our various South African parks agencies as well to really help them improve their skills and knowledge in the area. So it's a really great educational intervention that also supports a lot of other conservation work as well. And I think all of these trusts are really critical in terms of their ability to keep supporting environmental and conservation activities across South Africa. Because as we know, the biodiversity and the incredible species we have are one of the key draws for people from a tourism perspective and for many other reasons to come to this country.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talking about, tourism and everything going on, one of the issues, you mentioned water, but the other issue I think for our country and for every country in the world is sustainable energy. And, it's so important for our future. So what are the WWF doing in the area of sustainable energy?
So we do work with a number of different companies and government levels of government in terms of really trying to change policy around energy production in South Africa. I think particularly advocating for more and more renewable energy, because we know it's not only, has a much lower environmental impact, but also is much cheaper and is really the future as it builds up to scale in this country and across the world. We're also working with many different companies in terms of their own commitments around renewable energy and around their climate impacts. So we run a program called Alliances for Climate Action as an example. We've got a number of companies and cities who've come together to really look at what their long-term commitments would be in terms of trying to get to net zero from a climate impact perspective. So I think it's really important for us to try and influence companies and government, and then also finally to try and talk to consumers and individuals. So things like our Earth Hour campaigns that we run every year, it's a very specific one day of the year, really just to shine a light on an issue that's important to us all year round. And particularly for South Africa, where we've had major energy uncertainty, quite expensive kind of energy prices, and also obviously that a lot of our energy still comes from coal. So it's got a very big environmental impact that we want to move away from.
Yeah, I think that's important. I saw the city of Cape Town has just announced the new the Cape Town Futures Energy Festival, where they are raising awareness among the public for making Cape Town basically sustainable in that area. So that's quite interesting as well.
Definitely, we need some real leadership from our cities and from our other levels of government in this area.
Yes. So from your side also, the organization produces a huge amount of research, and obviously research is important. Do you collaborate with other parties such as academic institutions, and how important are these collaborations for your organization?
I think they're really critical. Well, everything that we do is really about collaboration, both with academic institutions, with other NGO partners, with our corporate partners, and with government. So getting a diversity of views and getting a diversity of input into our policies and thinking is really critical. I think deep down we're a science-based organization, so it's really important for us to produce that level of detail and scientific credibility to help us make decisions and help us then think about how we influence other people to make decisions. So we've got about 70 kind of scientists who work for WWF in South Africa. And then we've got a number of great partners across the academic sphere and across other NGOs that we work with to really pull that together.
Oh, that's awesome. I think, research is important, and also, collaboration. And then the other key one is to actually get the public involved, because ultimately the success of basically any big initiative revolves around the public, and raising public awareness is such an important issue in conservation. So which channels do you actually use to get your message out, and are things like social media important in your communication and becoming more important?
Definitely. I think we obviously try and use traditional channels like radio and TV and print, but those are often expensive and difficult to access, even for where there might be pro bono advertising given at times. So digital channels and using our social media channels is really critical to access a wide range of different audiences. I think somebody who's looking for WWF information on LinkedIn versus Instagram versus Twitter versus Facebook might have slightly different kind of intentions and interests. They might be from a different age group and a different kind of demographic kind of community as well. So we do try and use as many channels as possible. And then again, as I said earlier, over the last couple of years, we've been particularly driving this For Nature For You brand kind of ethos, because we do think it's important for many South Africans to understand how dependent we are on nature for our resources.
Yeah, I think the big fortunate thing about any nature conservation, especially where animals are involved, it's there's a lot of content that can be created that people love and love to share.
No, for sure. And I mean, that's the really highlight spot for us as well, when we do get that level of engagement from supporters on social media channels, or great feedback from supporters when they've seen something interesting, a video or a bit of information or an article.
Justin, raising public awareness is extremely important for, in conservation, because, getting the public involved is to really get change, you need to get the public involved. So which channels do you use how to deliver your message, and how important is something like social media in your communication?
And I think the diversity of those, if you look at from a LinkedIn through to Instagram, through to Facebook, through to Twitter, those are access some of the information and messaging that we do put out there. And then I think we've really tried to drive our brand message over the last couple of years quite strongly.
So, Justin, the coronavirus has really changed, the way we work, the way we think, and turned our world upside down. Do you guys have any plans or new ideas in this regard?
Most organizations in South Africa and globally. So I think we're all really struggling with the level of uncertainty at the moment.
If any of our listeners want to get involved with the WWF, how can they donate or get involved with you guys?
Look at our website, which is www.wwf.org.za. There's a donate button. And
well, that's awesome. So, Justin, if you have, from your side, have one message for somebody at home and that wants to make a difference in the environment, what is your one thing that you would tell them?
To change their behavior in their lives. So over the last few years, it's often been around recycling, I mentioned earlier, for instance, food systems are some of the most significant impacts we have on the planet at the moment, and where you're shopping from as well. And maybe just sort of investigating that as a quite big contribution that we each make in terms of our potential impact.
Yeah, well, that's very good advice. Justin, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for taking time. I know you are very, very busy, but I think our listeners will appreciate it. And you've shared some valuable information about what you're doing. And I'm sure we will, there's some supporters out there who will be happy to hear from you guys. Thank you for listening to today's show. We are grateful for everyone listening to our podcast and appreciate your interest in saving our planet. Please be sure to subscribe and follow us on the links below. It would also be extremely helpful if you could share the show and all your links with your friends and family. Bless all of you and bless our earth.